Here's what happened. I was flying across the US, and on the flight, I was thinking of, okay, what are going to be some topics that we could have a conversation about? And the one that hit me was forgiveness. It's in theme with, the title of these surprising effects of forgiving ourselves to beat burnout. And that title hit me, and then I was working it out with my life partner Adriana. We were talking it out a little bit more, and it came out to be that title. But it was a forgiving yourself, how beautiful of a gift that is to give yourself. But we also have to understand what the hell that even means. How do we do that? And I want to help you dive into that today together, and get into those surprising effects, but also at the core of it, how does this all connect to burnout? This is the Make Burnout Extinct podcast. I'm Robert David Weeks. Today, before I get into forgiveness and we go through that journey of how to, for the plays of how to start making it easier to forgive ourselves, I want to first say thank you to you, because through the push-up challenge that I talked about before, of every rating and review that comes in for this podcast, I'll do a push-up, and it's 3 push-ups for every written review. I have now done over 40 push-ups. And what's so cool about that is, one, it shows that this is bigger than just me and a laptop talking to myself in these moments. It's you're actually there listening. And that is a beautiful gift you've given to me that I don't take that for granted. I am taking that as fuel and motivation to keep putting in the reps and to keep going in this journey. And I sometimes have a hard time struggling how to communicate that verbally to you, of what that impact has for me. And then what it feels me to want to do for you is to continue to put out amazing quality information, insights, stories and plays that you can take for your own burnout proof playbook, so that you can make burnout extinct in your life. I'm going to be continuing to do these push-ups all the way until we hit the goal of 50 ratings. I'll share with you once that happens. I appreciate always the listen, the sharing with friends and family. All of it helps towards the mission of Make Burnout Extinct. So let's get into it for today, for forgiveness. I want to get into the problem that we all face, define some terms for you, connect this to burnout, share my own personal stories of navigating forgiveness. And I got one in particular, a high school story that I've never shared anywhere else besides here, and that I'm aware of. And you may laugh a little bit with it, but it's really important for how long that has lasted for me in my entire life. This story that I'll share with you, it's stuck with me. That is something that I had worked on throughout my life, and has gotten to a point where I continue to have to remind myself about it. It pops up once in a while, even to this day. And then I'm going to outline 3 plays that can help make it easier for you to forgive yourself. So the problem, the challenge, the shit that can come up, and that is the beating up ourselves. That shitty experience where we wanted to say something, we wanted to do an action, we wanted to make sure that we made that meeting in time, but we didn't. And by missing it, or not saying what we wanted to really say to that person for how they made us feel, or really letting them know that we cared about them, to not responding back to that email that could have changed, it could have created a new path for your career. Those are all of the mistakes that we can beat up ourselves about internally. Have that little voice in our head just saying, dude, why the hell did you miss that call? Dude, why did you miss that appointment? Dude, you should have said it in this way. Dude, you had the opportunity to continue with this momentum and take it to the next level, but you chose not to, out of fear. That little voice that gets at it, that really can open us up and really hit home to our inner kid. I think about it, my 6-year-old that I protect. It can really just go right to the heart of that version of me. And it causes me to then freeze because of it. Gets me back into that kid energy of, oh, I did something bad. And with freezing, what that then causes for me is to not take action and choose behaviors that are going to improve my quality of life. When I got stuck in that, and I was stuck in that for many years in my life, going back to when I started journaling at 22 and actually understanding more about myself, to feeling like I had that 10 years of just getting by spaghetti phase, trying stuff out in my career, to then get to a point where I am now. But what has helped me to move through that and to continue to move towards what I want and towards the doorway of possibilities into a quality of life that I never thought could be possible for myself, what continues to move me in that direction is forgiveness. It is the paddle in the canoe of you moving towards your goals and your vision of life. Like it is what helps you to keep going forward. Because what can happen, is that fear that we feel that then can lead into the freeze, and then that builds on the guilt and the shame and the overwhelm and the stress that comes from constantly beating up ourselves. That can then lead into burnout. And before I get into that connection, I want to define the terms for you. Specifically, forgiveness. Let's get into forgiveness. Going to Merriam-Webster dictionary, my buddy. Forgiveness, to forgive, is to cease to feel resentment against. That is to stop feeling resentment against yourself when we're forgiving ourselves. And then resentment, when I can get that up here, my computer's taking a little while here. Resentment is a persistent ill will at something regarded as a wrong, insult, or injury. It's having a negative charge to something that you consider is wrong, which I envelop in the mistake. It's like you have negativity towards that mistake, the beating up, that action of beating up yourself internally because of the mistake. So that provides those definitions. Now, how this connects to burnout is that without forgiving ourselves, that overwhelm, that stress, the shame and the guilt, that builds, it all flows into the cortisol levels increasing for the overwhelm. Specifically, when we have that overwhelm and the anxiety and the stress, we're releasing that cortisol that then creates this chronic stress over time if we are not closing that loop and we're just constantly beating up ourselves internally. And that can then lead toward our first red flag of chronic exhaustion that we've talked about, for that path leading to chronic inflammation that then moves into chronic exhaustion. And then the negativity, by beating up ourselves internally, we're fueling that negativity, the ill will we have towards the wrong, the mistake. So then we're hitting already this 2/3 of the way there to burnout. So what forgiveness does, which is so epic and mind-blowing, is that it actually reduces our levels of stress and cortisol levels. And it was shown through a study. And it's this study that I'm going to get it up here. So I have it here for you. This was this was a study that was done where for 5 weeks it measured the levels of forgiveness in participants, and found that when forgiveness rose, levels of stress went down. And this is in the American Psychological Association. It's the title, Forgiveness Can Improve Mental and Physical Health. That was wild. And what reinforces it is the productivity that we can experience at work when we are forgiving ourselves. And this was another surprising effect for me that I noticed, which was it was in Forbes for this article. It's called Learning to Forgive Yourself, One of the Fastest Ways to Be Happier at Work. And it was a study that was done by Leadership IQ called The Links Between Self-Forgiveness, Forgiving Others, and Employee Engagement. What it found was that people who can truly forgive themselves are 65% more motivated to give 100% effort at work. So all of a sudden, when we can forgive ourselves, our productivity and motivation to want to continue to put in 100% of effort of work can increase dramatically for the odds of going and doing that. And it was a study done with 11,000 employees, but it only found that actually only 8% of people have high levels of self-forgiveness. So there's room for improvement here for all of us to continue to focus in on forgiving ourselves. But there's a lot of potential return and reward of doing that. One is that lowering of the stress, which lowers the cortisol, it's lowering the cortisol levels that lowers the stress. And we can close the loop for ourselves by forgiving ourselves. And what that then happens is we're avoiding the chronic stress, and we're moving in the reverse direction towards making burnout extinct in our life. Now, the whole thing that comes up here is, well, how the hell, what is forgiving yourself? What does that really, what does that mean? A great way that was summarized for me was the being able to let go of the ill will and then replace it with goodwill. And compassion is another word you can think of. Compassion for the actions that you did, which were the mistakes that you made, and you're able to move forward and then decide on the action to take that's going to actually improve your quality of life. And I want to share that in my own experience, because what has happened for me with forgiveness, it's interesting because I will make a mistake, and what would happen is I would beat myself up about it. I'd be like, dude, you could have done better with that. Or like, dude, why are you fucking making it so hard, so much harder than it has to be? Especially when I was getting ready for like presentations, I always would struggle with trying to communicate my words that I wanted to share through, the thoughts that I had in my mind, how to communicate that through my words. I really struggle with that. And it's been something I've been having to work on over the years, like now nearly a decade on this thing of communication. But at the beginning, especially, it was really hard, and I would beat myself up, and I'd be like having to do like multiple takes on, practicing for presentations to posting on social media. Like there'd be times where I'm doing like 20, 30, 40 takes, and I'm putting in those reps, but that can lead into the anger and the shame of like, why can't I get this on the first try? And the fucking reason is because I literally haven't put in enough reps of practice. It's like any new skill, when it comes to creating a new habit, it takes repetition to focus in on this. And when I think back to high school, there was a moment for me where what would happen is in high school, I will get nervous, and what then would happen is my body would respond by sweating from my armpits, and I would get these pit stains forming that would get me super uncomfortable. And I'd always have my arms by my side, and I'd be like so worried that like everyone's looking at me and the spotlight was always on me. And what I realized though was like I'm in this like vicious cycle of, okay, dude, you're thinking about this, of worried that people are gonna be nervous. You're getting nervous, and then all of a sudden, if you're getting nervous, it's gonna continue to cause you to have these massive armpit stains. And so what I ended up doing, which was kind of funny looking back on it, was I was like, all right, shit, I gotta dry these off somehow. And I ended up going to the bathroom and actually drying my armpits, literally sticking my armpit under the hand dryer to dry these pit stains out, so that I can then go back and have like a few minutes where I didn't have to worry about the pit stains forming, but then they'd form again, and I have to go repeat that process like throughout the day. And I had to do that for years, which sucked. But what happened was I was constantly beating myself up about it internally. And it took me years to get to the point where I then ended up making the decision. This is what helped me to forgive, was making the decision of, I'm going to accept this action that happens. I'm just going to accept it as this is what happens for me. Because the other alternative is to like beat it out of you internally, is to like suppress it, to try to like attack it. And that can be verbally, internally, with that internal dialogue, just like trying to suppress it, ignore it as best you can. But I know for me that doesn't work. And in general, the body is going to eventually tell you that this isn't going to work by responding back when you suppress it. So for me, that was a realization of I have to make a decision to accept this, of like, if this is my reality, this is my reality, and go from there. What happened was in making that decision of acceptance, that became a form of forgiveness for myself. And it's a little bit different than traditionally what's out there for forgiveness. It was an acceptance that allowed me to realize that this is a behavior of mine. So then I could actually see it for what it was. I could actually face it. By accepting it, I brought it into reality. And by doing that, what happened was I was able to get comfortable with it, of this is something that happens. And what happened by doing that was actually the nervousness of being worried that everyone else is going to be seeing this thing started to go away. And I actually started to forget that it even happened. And as a result, what happens was I was not getting the nervous pit stains. Like they can still come up once in a while, but I wasn't getting them as frequent as I had been in high school. And that for me clicked, of all of a sudden now I'm not having to spend all of my, like, this massive amount of energy and time towards my armpits, but instead I can take that towards like working on my communication skills so I can be a better public speaker, and I can then communicate better my thoughts and insights and share that with the world. It helped me to become a better human being, of taking responsibility in my life and deciding that I'm going to courageously step into sharing what is truthfully on my heart to people that I care about, and people that, and share with people things about myself that I in the past would be embarrassed to share or feel shame around, to actually express my truth and the truth to other people. I go back to that Mark Twain quote, which is when you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. You just share. You're able to just share. You don't have to like go through this, like, what did I share to this person, and go through those narratives. And it's powerful. And so acceptance is a first step in that process. And that is a play that you can actually take in for yourself, is to be able to write out or let go of having to control the behavior. So a way that this could help register it for you for a thought process is, what if you have to live with this for the rest of your life? What if this behavior is something that you do have to deal with every day of your life? How would you show up to that behavior then? Because I know if I'm gonna have to live with it, like I think about a roommate. If I'm gonna have to have a roommate, I gotta make sure I'm agreeable and on good terms with that roommate. So I'm not gonna continue to bash this roommate and make it a really terrible environment and experience to live in for this roommate, because then I'm gonna have to live in that too. So it's actually, I'm gonna be more compassionate and understanding and caring about this behavior. And that then opens up into acceptance of the behavior. And when you can accept the behavior, you then have a window of time to have a surge of courage that comes through you in that moment to then take action towards a desired activity. So as an example would be getting ready for practicing a presentation. What can happen is I can go through a practice round for a presentation and it doesn't go well. It's a shitty experience. Like I make mistakes. It's shitty. I feel shitty. It's just all around like, this sucks. Like I want to rip everything up. I want to rip the paper up and like restart for my outline. But it's in that moment of realizing, okay, if I can accept and let go of the control of the behavior, if I'm just going to know that I'm going to make mistakes, or not make if I'm not going to get it on the first try for the practice, if I can accept that, then what is the desired activity that's going to help me to move forward? Well, it's to practice again. And so instead of ripping up the outline and just being frustrated and having the mental chatter going, I actually go and put another rep in for practice, and then another rep in, and another rep in. And what has helped me with my presentations is I've shrunk the amount it takes. If I look across the board for presentations, sometimes it goes ups and downs. You have the peaks and valleys, but for the majority of the time, I am shrinking the amount of practice that I have to do for presentations. It gets easier and easier and easier. And so that's something you can think about, is think about the roommate. If you're going to be a roommate with this behavior, how do you show up with that behavior? What is that dialogue to create an environment that you can live in with that behavior? If you're just going to accept this as a part of your life, because what then can happen is actually eventually it just disappears because you've actually faced it. You've actually courageously been able to face that behavior. So that's one play they can try, is that visualization of it. The other one is to celebrate the small effort. So I want to go back into another story recently that happened for me. I do something where I write out 12 habits. This is something I got from Lifebook for a program. It's a program that there's a few different programs like this out there where you go through different categories of life, writing out what you want to have happen in those categories of life. And then with this, you have 12 habits, daily habits that are helping you to move towards what is a life vision. For me, 5 months, I look at this year, for 5 months, I could not get all 12 of my daily habits completed. I had this mental block of I am not able to complete all 12 habits. I have to mess up somehow or some way. Maybe you have something similar where it's like you can't just get it done. There has to be some sort of messy thing that happens. That's kind of like the shoe's going to drop on the other side. It's that type of thought process. So what happened was I ended up coming at it from a different angle. I ended up saying, okay, if this is going to be it, if I accept this, that this is what's been happening for my habits of every month I haven't been getting it, and I look at it, okay, if I can accept that, then what is my desired activity? What do I want to do? Well, I want to get all these habits done. So what happened was I faced the reality that I'm not getting these habits done. And it's the responsibility that I have to take on if I'm doing this. So when I accepted that and I created the forgiveness of being able to let go of that, I then had a courageous opportunity, a window of time to make a new decision that would take me on a new path. And what I decided was I'm going to, for this next month, it was the month of May, I was like, I'm going to get all 12 habits done. No excuses. What I do is it's a 90% completion. So it's roughly 3 days that I don't have to do the habit in the month. And with May, when I calculated all the days, I was able to get all 12 habits done. And not just in May, but it was also in June. And then in July. And over the course of those 90 days, what happened was my confidence in the confidence I felt, the trust I felt in myself increased over the course of that time of realizing I can get tasks done without having to make it messy and messy and feel like the shoe's going to drop on the other end. So what I did though was along the way, I took time to celebrate the effort. I have a moment where I do every 10 days, I'll review them and do a little star, kind of like one of the, that star you get as a kid where you did something good, you get a star. I do the same thing for my habits every 10 days. I put a star next to it for a check for each habit that gets 90% completed still for that month, for that time frame. And that's a way I celebrate and I can recognize the small effort. And doing that, you have hundreds of opportunities with the mistakes that we make to be able to celebrate the small effort of the change of direction that you take. So what you can do for these next 7 days is commit to forgiving yourself at least once a day for a mistake that you make. And you can go back to that play of writing out or thinking about, if you were to be have this behavior be your roommate, how would you interact with that behavior? And you knew that you could not get out of this roommate situation, like college, that you can't leave. How would you interact with that behavior? And then from there, how would you move into the desired activity? What would that desired activity look like to help you to move forward and not stay stuck? And then from there, celebrate that small effort of that play. The small efforts you take the time to celebrate those. Because over the long term, they make a big difference. I now want to leave you with this quote from Alex Ramosi, which is, "Now is not forever." It's going to be hard at the beginning with forgiving ourselves, but it gets easier if we continue to show up and to put in those reps. And it may take a few days, few months, few weeks, but to always come back to that path of forgiveness. Because that is then going to open up the doorways of more possibilities in your life. If you like this episode, please don't forget to rate this podcast and help get this message out of Make Burnout Extinct. And you can share what resonates with you from this episode by connecting with me on Instagram and LinkedIn. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. I don't take that for granted. And I'm excited to reconnect again soon.